Let's talk a little bit about value creation. Now, we're taught in ITIL that value is created from utility and warranty, and those concepts are wonderful. But when I start thinking about value creation, utility and warranty are not words that leap to the very front of my thinking. I think about high quality services, right? Things where the service is available when the customer needs it, it provides the right level of functionality for them, high quality, few incidents, we do a really good job behind the scenes of eliminating problems. That to me is value creation. But it has to cost the right amount for the organization. If it's too expensive, then the value is we don't get the great return on investment that we're looking for. So it's that great balance between value and cost that we really look at when we think about the creation of value. Another thing that's really important to me when it comes to value creation is transparency. And we talk about this a lot when we talk about IT governance. But for value to be created, the business needs to be able to establish a strategy, and we need to be able to see how that strategy is engaged throughout the organization and then measure and be able to demonstrate the success back up to the business. To me, that's where we see true value, when we can measure it and be able to communicate it to customers. That's tied very closely to effective controls. Controls in themselves can be very limiting. We want effective controls, just the right amount of control without it, completely dampening innovation within the environment. Now, where it comes to processes, processes help to generate efficiency and effectiveness of operations, right? If we do things in a very streamlined way, very efficiently, then it costs the organization less to provide the services than it would if it were ad hoc and something that needed better definition. So the value is created from consistent, well-defined processes. We have to have the right skilled resources to help deliver that value, and then one other thing that comes to mind when I think about value is having good quality management information to base decisions on. It's one thing to set the strategy, it's another one to get the feedback back from the environment and say, wow, this is a great picture, and by the way, I'm going to change our strategy based upon what I see, and do so with confidence that you're leading the organization on the right path. So when I think about value delivery, those are the things that come to my mind as being the most critical to focus on in order to create value. I know the ITIL life cycle talks about, the delivery of services and the supporting processes and infrastructure, but to me that tangibly sums it up as the value for the right cost, well-defined and executed processes, good management information. That's what creates the value delivery, being able to see what we provide from an IT perspective. Now, if we take a look at this picture that we have here, here's our service from our customer through the WAN to the server and out to the database. That big picture of a service is what we're told from an ITIL perspective is how we can create value, right? It's the end-to-end service, the quality of that service, the availability of that service. But notice that service itself may provide value, but the supporting processes underneath it are also incredibly important to making certain that service delivers its value. The service desk supporting the end user, desktop supports the end user, server, right, networking, data warehousing. All of these groups have particular focus areas, the knowledge and subject matter expertise that they develop internally. Now, when we talk about processes, processes now span across these functional groups. And each of these processes deliver value through their objective or their focus. So incident management is getting resources as needed to restore service. Problem, it's all about getting rid of the problems with the service, doing trend analysis proactively so that we have higher quality. Change management gets rid of those issues that we find and manages risk while it does so. Release is focused on providing new or enhanced functionality of the service. Availability is looking at each component, maximizing its delivery of availability. Capacity, just-in-time scalability to meet the changing needs of the business. And security, protecting our knowledge assets. Now, those were the only processes I had room enough to put up there. There are plenty more. But when I think about value creation, those are the processes that immediately come to mind as being those that are focused on delivering value. And so putting better definition around those processes means that the services themselves are going to have much better alignment to what the business needs. So I'm going to read these quotes to you because I really, really like these. And I believe these came right out of the ITIL book. We need a comprehensive approach to service management, seeking to understand its structure, its interconnections between all its components, and how changes in any one area will affect the whole system and its constituent parts over time. We need to implement a systems approach to service management to ensure learning and improvement through a big picture view of services and service management. It extends the management horizon and provides a sustainable long-term approach. So to me, we have two key concepts here. First of all, interconnections between processes are hugely important for us to pay attention to, because anytime we make a modification to one process, we are going to impact the whole system. And so being able to provide this big picture view of how everything fits together is what service management is all about. So processes deliver value because they go across those functional silos. They look at how to focus in on that particular objective to deliver to the customer. So not really kind of looking at the people involved, but the creation of the value of each one of those processes. The customers don't care about the silos. They don't care if they're dealing with networking or an external supplier or an internal supplier. All they want is for the service to work, for it to work at the level of quality that meets their expectations. So processes create the connections between the resources, the components, and our customers. They're what help to deliver that value. So I want you to think about ITIL as being this value network. It's really a web of relationships, okay? And it's so complex in nature that it really has to be managed holistically from a governing group that's looking at service management as a whole. Because it's a very complex set of dynamic exchanges, meaning it's always changing. And the more organizations we add into this value network, the more complex it gets. And I know that I'm speaking to a lot of people that are third-party providers to customers. So you're dealing with the customer, you're dealing with your internal organization, and then many times you're dealing with other third-party vendors. And when you start getting into that type of relationship, the complexity and the interrelationships between inputs and outputs of processes become very complex. Now I want to just kind of show you this picture because I think it really creates a valuable view of building this network. If we go back to our functional silos, the service desk, desktop, client services, network operations, whatever they are, and let's say we start with incident management. We map it out across these functional silos. And then we start with request fulfillment and event management, problem management, change management, release management, service level management, and maybe configuration, right? And we begin to look at these interchanges between these processes. So from incident, we get requests that go to the request fulfillment process. From event, we have incidents that go to incident management. From change, we have incidents as a result of poorly managed change. And so we begin to see all these inputs and outputs that go from one process to another. And notice the reason why we call this a network, because very quickly we start to view this like a spider web, right? How all of these things kind of feed from one process to another. And we've only just begun. We haven't even started with things like availability management, capacity management, financial management, knowledge management, security, continuity, supplier. Now, this visual here is to kind of show you what happens if you make a change at the service desk. Look at how it really pulls at the fabric of everything else that we've created in the environment. This is why isolated change, when we talk about processes, is so dangerous. Because if we make one change in an environment, we have no idea what the total impact is to the rest of the environment. And so whenever we map out a new process, to manage the risk associated with modifying that process, we have to get a much broader audience involved, a cross-functional group of people. We can't make isolated changes without understanding its full impact on our value network. And this is kind of brings home this point for me. Today's problem is often created by yesterday's solution. And so we do something for the sake of doing it. We put it into the environment and we kind of walk away from it because we're focused on the next event-oriented thing. And this generally happens in reactive environments. The customer calls, they're having a really flaming day and they're complaining about something, and so we make a quick change to meet their expectations and then we walk away from it. And what we see is that the performance will go up and will create the intended effect, but no one's paying attention to it anymore, so it goes back down. It's an isolated thing that we changed that didn't stick in the environment and no one's paying attention to it. What we want to look at is change that moves us ever progressively towards our goal, where we're constantly building in the feedback to understand how the changes have impacted the environment. So when you start thinking about modifying processes in an environment, it has to be built on the Deming cycle. We put something in place, we measure the impact that it has on the environment, and then we gradually continue to change that process over time.